Hi, everybody. This is David P. France, and I'm coming to you from Basel, Switzerland. Before we start this interview, I'd like for you, those who are out there, to like the video, subscribe to the YouTube and BitChute channels, and also tell your family and friends about what we're doing. Feel free to share the video. That's the way that we get our information out there, that people get to hear about what we're doing. And of course, I greatly appreciate it. So tonight, or actually today, his time, I'm speaking with ENRIQUE CRUZ DEJESUS, Artistic Director for Alpha Omega Theatrical Dance Company in New York City. And ENRIQUE was my former artistic director. I actually was in this company for maybe like 6 years or so. I always forget, I think it was like 5 or 6 years, something like that. And I learned, if let's just put it this way, your company was where I learned how to become a professional dancer, right? I mean, that was the opportunity that you guys allowed me to have, and I appreciate it. You know, it is coming around full circle. Let's put it that way. Right. So all the lessons that came through when we were going through what we were going through are now, you know, circling back in a different way. But we talk about that later. How are things, ENRIQUE?
Things are great. Everything that you said is true. I think the time that you were here, it was doing everything sort of like guerrilla style. You know, you go into the studio, you bang it out, you learn the choreography. We set times to do these shows and these concerts or whatever traveling shows we had back then, and just bang it out. Now, when I look at it from that time, I said, man, it's so great to have your own space, because you mellow out a lot and you have time to think. I think the one thing that you learn is that when you're displaced, you're eager to keep trying new things and create things really quick. When you have a space, you have a little time to think, to pause, to think other things outside of just creating works. And it gives you a different perspective. You don't feel like you're racing against time, if that's a good wording to do, you know, but to say. But there were beautiful times, and those times lasted a good, almost close to 20 years being displaced. I don't know if you know that, but that's how long Alpha Omega was displaced before we got this space.
Right, I remember. So you felt like there was a time pressure back then?
Yeah, I think it was a time pressure, and I think that it was, because I had different dancers from different level and different backgrounds, and being a newbie in the choreography aspect of things, I felt like I had a lot to prove, you know, and although I had this big vision of how I wanted Alpha to start looking like, it was not much different than what my mentors did. The only thing, it was just me creating my works. And I just felt that I had something to prove, which I always feel that way. I feel like I always have something to prove. But as you get older and as you see yourself, I'm going on 25 years running Alpha Omega, and I just feel like now I could step back, be a presenter, be a dance creator, be a coach, be an advocate, you know, learn the politics of running your own organization with your home base, with your own funding. And you realize that this world, the dance community, when you start going up the little ladder of a little bit of success, it becomes a little more conservative, a little more, how would I say, academia. Everybody talks in this other language that I was like, man, I didn't grow up like that. But I realized that I have a lot to say, and that I have a lot to say that people actually wants to hear from a perspective that didn't come from that kind of background, you know.
Well, what's interesting is I always believe that dance is, I mean, you can have the building and you can have the board and you can have all of these other things, but let's say in this particular situation in which we're living, which is the COVID, it's almost like all the buildings are burning down, right? So it's almost, I'm not saying you're starting from scratch, but you understand what I'm saying. It's almost as if none of this matters. None of it matters. So it doesn't matter if you have a BA, even more so. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter if, you know, like what the New York Times says about you in a review, because who's being reviewed, right? And I also believe that there's a big generational shift. So, I mean, Enrique, you're a senior member of the dance community now, which is very different than when I was working with you, right? Like, even though I think you were senior then, there were still more senior people above you, right? So, you know, you were kind of stuck in between a rock and a hard place on certain things, right? But now it's like the building has been burned down to the ground, and we are literally having to re-envision what everything means and how we're gonna, you know, move forward. How is Alpha Omega planning to do this?
Well, listen, once the city shut down and we had those few weeks of isolation, there was, I mean, New York literally turned into a ghost town.
Yeah, I heard.
Nobody out there, a whole bunch of stuff going on, and everybody was walking around like zombies, like stay away and all kind of, you know, we were called the epicenter. So we were like described as the enemy of the world, you know.
I don't mean to laugh, but you know.
But you being a New Yorker, no, oh, please, shut up, you know, kind of thing. But, you know, I always feel that New Yorkers are very inventive. They know how to get around certain things. And borrowing from my mentors on how to run the dance company, I had an eagerness to try to do something when nobody dared to do. Like many of us, we had to shut down our building, but I had an outdoor space. And I said, well, I could do something in the outdoor space if I could find the materials to do it, which it was the platforms, the sound system, the tables and umbrellas, you know, all the shebang. And I didn't know how it was gonna work. So I started producing what I call the solo suites. And that's including actors, poets, musicians, dance makers, and whatnot. I was now the house that gave residency to all these people who I gave a platform for them to showcase their work, their music, their poetry, their monologues, and so forth. And what I realized that there were a group of audience who dared to come see a show with their masks in the outdoors. And the first show was like, oh shit, it's about 40 people here that showed up. And then, you know, we were serving wine and all that, and all the wine wound up going away because everybody wanted to stay there longer. And what I learned is that in isolation, people try to find ways to have normalcy. And I realized that the little bit of normalcy that I could give was in the outdoor. So that took a momentum. I got 2 reviews out of it. I had 3 magazine online interview out of it. And I did all the way from April to the end of October presentations. So the weird thing, we never stopped. Even now, this is the last week of the month. And I'm still busy. I'm still
I can imagine.
We did everything that everybody did, teaching online, showing archives online. I provided teachers to teach their own classes online in the studio. And you start thinking outside of the box, and that's basically what it was. I was just going along with what we call street performers. Like when you go to the subway, there's always someone doing something that and I realized there's a true respect for that when people come out and do things. And in the dance community, they'll dance on specific specific dance. But I didn't want to do that. I like the formality of coming an audience to come see you, and it sets a different mood. You set a thing than just people walking around stopping to see you and observe you. When you actually tell them to sit down, they actually have to sit and observe and think more in depth. So someone asked me about that. Would you do dance on specific sites? I said, only if it's conducive to dance, you know.
Right.
I'm not dancing on no hard floors anymore, or
What
telling
was
my
it?
dancers to do that.
What was it? Someone who could actually make it happen, or were they just curious? Someone who
They
was
were
curious.
asking because they usually get grants
Uh-huh.
and they hire a company to do presentation on site specific,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
our work is very athletic, and you know, I can't change dancers getting injured.
Right. It's not. Yeah. They're not seeing it. I hear what you're saying. When they approach you, they don't necessarily know. Sometimes they're only looking at, oh, he's a dancer or they're a dance company. Let me just ask the question. They don't necessarily really know what it takes in order for you to do and what in order for us to do what we're doing.
I think some do, but it's becoming a trend now. It's becoming this thing over here in New York where, you know, you go out there in the park and you start doing something, and like anybody who doesn't see a lot of art find it fascinating, you know.
Yes.
Which is good too, if it works for them and it works for those type of presentations and choreographers who they do that. That's fine too. I personally won't say that I won't do it, because I have to do it with a reason. I have to do it with what's the kind of environment and the floors and the space and all that. But I'm glad I didn't have to do it, you know. So I'm glad I did what I did outdoor, and I talked to a few other companies and a few other arts organization directors, and sharing, they were asking me, how did I get this? And I was sharing with them how I got it, but nobody believed then that all along I was working along this thing. And then when it happened, it was like, why him? You know, I was like,
right, because they didn't understand. They didn't understand.
They didn't understand the makeup, you know.
No.
Now
very interesting. Look, Enrique. I watched the first video, which is interview number 3. If you guys want to see the first interview, that's interview number 3. You talked about this in the last video, and part of what I said to you was, when I met you, I knew that you were committed to this entire thing. Now, you were more committed than I was. And so I think at that point, I needed to be around somebody who was more committed, because there was a lot of fear that I had. And in order to work on removing that fear, I had to have somebody that was really, so I knew from the beginning, I was like, this guy, I had not met anyone like that in a very, very long time. So what I find is that people generally cannot make the connection or the correlation between you as a person and your commitment and then the results. Now, I didn't necessarily know how it was going to turn out for you. I just knew it was going to happen. I was like, something's going to happen for them, right? You know, in terms of you and Donna is your longtime partner. You guys you have been working on this for a very, very, very long time. I mean, since you've been involved with the organization since teenagers. And when I met you, you know, you were already, you know,
I was doing my stuff now. You know, I was performing too still, you know, but not in concert work, more in theater. Theater and a few commercials, a few stuff that I did on TV. But I was pursuing the progression of going from a concert dancer to a commercial performer. And thank God that I went from dancer to singer to actor. It was really wonderful, because I didn't know that most of the jobs that I booked in the commercial world was through being a dancer. And then later on, when someone tested me to sing a principal role song, they were like, this guy could sing. And that's how I became an understudy. From an understudy, I realized that I met a director, what's his name? He was directing for the Warner Street Theater. And I went to a call for Evita. And I sang. I was going to the chorus call, and then he gave me back a call. He said, I want you to come to this call, which it was a principal call. And I went, And before I got up and sang again for him, he said, I want you to know one thing. He goes, you sing like a beast. He goes, you have these pipes on you that you kind of just do it, and then you go, oh, when is the dance combination coming? And he said, you should start looking at yourself differently. Now, he didn't give me that job. He didn't give me that job. But fast forward about 4 or 5 months later, he is at the Warner Street directing another production of Evita, calls me in, gives me an audition, and casts me. And then casts me again in Miss Saigon. And so these are things, you know, these are just the progression of being also dancer, artistic director. Now I put myself into producing things because I like producing a lot. And so all the things that I learned from the space is that I like the idea of how this particular block has about 14, 15 theater that are owned by theater people. Right. But this is the one space that we have a studio theater that is owned by a dance person that produces dance, music, and theater. You know, and although we're still a dance company, we are just truly a dance company. I'm hoping one day if the energies in the world happen and the universe align, that I could build another 2 studios in the back lot. That would be the hope.
In the real estate. You're in the real estate business. Look, I think another thing that came across during the third interview that I had with you was we talked about choreography and pieces that Alpha Omega, some of them were given to you and others were developed by you. Could you give us an idea of, and you named maybe like Truculence, you named Narcissus Rising. Could you give us an idea of the different types of choreography that you have under your auspices, if you want to call it that?
Well, listen, we grew up with, as young dancers, learning choreography of these very prominent choreographers like Gary DeLoach, Lenny William, Marshall Romaine, Fred Benjamin, Elio Pomare. I mean, all these people. And we were doing works that are really, really mature for such a young company, because the average age at that time for the company were like, I would say 16 to about 28. And there was a mixture of experiences and a mixture of different level technique. But what we all had, we had this passion to perform anything that's thrown to us, you know. And so when we all started developing, a lot of the people started taking notice in our shows and our outdoor performances and whatnot. Next thing you know, reviewers were coming and all this good stuff. And then we started doing really in-depth political pieces, as you know, by Elio, which we did works like Tabernacle, Blues for the Jungle, Narcissus Rising, Hex. Recently we did Bernarda Alba, which called La Desenamorada. And we were doing these really in-depth pieces. And then I grew up doing, sort of adapting some of those philosophy when we did Dark September, when I did ICU or Invisible, or you know, works that are a little different. Truculence, we call it Tormenta now, because I reworked it and reimagined it a little better. And they started getting a little pull, and then of course it works like through Wonders Eye, or Pegao, or Tango entre tú y yo. These are just me going through this exploratory phase. And the thing that I understood between what's going on now and what Alpha is made of, what Alpha is made out of these older philosophy of techniques in dance. And at one point in this field, I was feeling, man, do I look dated or something?
Right.
So I go see shows and I go see different things. And it's no more different than what the past was. In my time, people were a little more political. They were a little more in your face because there was nothing to lose. You know, we didn't have a lot of platform. Now everybody's a little more reserved and more conservative and more, I don't know how to use the word.
Safe.
Half the time I see pieces and work and they'll name it one name or they'll name it this and they'll use all these intentional things, but you don't see it in their work. You know, you don't see getting to the point in their work. So I am a supporter of dance and I go see works. People say, hey, come see my work, I go see it. But I also look at that there is something to learn from the past, from these other choreographers that we could afford to borrow from. And that's, you know, I go through that a lot, and this new generation is complete. We had that conversation on the last conversation. With the new generation, I always feel that they had arrived. I said, nobody ever arrives. You just, before you know, you're just an old fogey, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's the journey, and it's the there was a nice phrase that Debbie Allen's documentary said. She goes, "This is the rehearsal of your life." She goes, when you start, when you progress, when you get older. You know? I thought that was unique. You know, I was like, wow, that's a good phrase.
Well, what's interesting is that you mentioned the younger generation, and every older generation says this about the younger generation, right? So there is a disconnect, right? There is, I'm sure there was, the older generation looked at, you know, us and said, okay, they're not doing this, or they don't know this, and that may be true. I think if I had to do it now, this sounds crazy, but if I had to do it all over again, knowing what I know now, oh, I would not have held back. There would be no fear. Because look, just as an aside, I believe, and I've come to this now, that dance has been a spiritual journey for me. I didn't want to put myself out there like that, right? Which is, I think it was clear, but because I would have done it earlier if I wanted to. It was a passion of mine, but it was more, I say, through being called, right? So I told somebody in the maybe 2 interviews ago, if I'm not dancing, like, bad things happen, things don't work, right? So I always, even if I'm working a 9-to-5, even if I'm doing freelance work, I always go to someone's studio and I'm moving. So I told you before, I'm with a flamenco studio in Zurich, and a lot of the moves that you were teaching us are part of what's going on in flamenco as well. And it's for some reason I understand that, and I understand how to, I still have to work on authenticity, right? Like trying to get it from their point of view, from their perspective, but I'm right there with them, right? But I think it's more of a calling, and I know that when I'm moving, okay, this is who I am, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, right? Where that was not in my mind, right? So I believe if I had to do it all over again, knowing what I know now, I would have been killing it, from like 18, right out of the gate. But there were so many things that were preventing me from, that were in my world, in my world or in my space, right? So I have a different perspective on it. I even know how to come at it different, even as someone who's 53. I can, like, in some respects, I'm already training for the next performance, even though that sounds completely crazy. I started jogging in the morning. I'm like, this is, because I already know it's coming. I already know it's coming. It's like, Dave, you need to get out there and jog. So every day I'm during vacation, and I've been going to the studio in Zurich 2-3 days per week.
Well, you could call it that. I call that the bug, like a cold or flu. When you start knowing that, damn, this feels good again. And and you start doing it and doing it, and next thing you know, it takes you exactly where you want it to go. You know, because you're paying with your dues, you're paying with your mind, you're paying with your heart, you're paying with understanding what you're trying to learn. And yes, if you look at it from the past, I got a little different from that. I'm glad that I learned it at that time, and I consumed it. I tested the grounds. I took the advice. I succeeded. And the good thing is that I am still close to all those people. I just spoke to Andy, who's, I think he's 84 now. I spoke to Marshall. Marshall's about 73, I think. So I'm still connected. I didn't mention Alfred Goldman, because Alfred Goldman is also one of my mentors. I never told him this, but he should know that. I used to dance with him. He used to run a company called Newark Dance Theater in Jersey.
Yeah, I know Alfred.
Amazing choreographer, amazing jazz teacher, but he gave me something. He also introduced me to Tally's work, in which I danced quite a bit of his work. So I think that, you know, I always tell every dancer, you have a journey, and it depends on what part of the journey you want to stay in, which path. One is you want to be this dancer and you want to live it full, or you want to be this dancer who turns choreographer and you want to learn it all, or you don't want to have it all in your hand, because this is what I think is happening. People are giving a lot of things in their hands, and suddenly they're talking this kind of way, and then this kind of thing where you go, wow, you know, and then you don't believe them. And you don't believe them sometimes because you don't understand that they don't know the hardship of all those things. But I always say time will tell. Sure. And it's consistent why people stay in this field for a long time. It's not because they're out of fashion or out of style, or the new generation is doing a new thing. It's because they built a philosophy. They built a vision of how they see things. They convey that truth over and over again. And that's why I'm an admiration of artistic directors that stay for a long time doing what they do, you know. And I just think that that's a lesson worth learning to give to the generation, the new generation.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting, just so you know, that Alfred Goldman, it was also an influence of mine, but I didn't meet him until recently. So the same way I didn't know Friend Benjamin, I didn't know Alfred Goldman, but the people that I knew them and were working directly with them, and then would come back to Jersey, where, you know, we were coming up in high school, and teach us all their stuff. So that's why when I went to Fred's class, Fred was like, "Who's this?" Yeah. Like, in other words, if you're the one that has the technique or style, rather, right? You develop a style, and then somebody you don't even know, who's never been to your class, comes in and is doing it, then they can instantly tell, right? Goldman, the same thing. Like, we learned all somewhere.
They know that.
Goldman, we learned his stuff in high school, right? We had somebody who was in that company at the time.
Alfred Goldman commissioned a lot of Fred Benjamin's work, but Alfred's work itself were pretty, because you got to remember, I always think that Alfred was an evolution of Fred. And sort of like a Fred style, but he had a more purist to it, because he likes different types of philosophy in it. And his company was getting out there. You know, he put us on salary for a good 3 years when his company was going up. And then, you know, like all things, you know, sometimes, you know, when shit don't work out, you know. But nonetheless, he is another person that should be respected in this community, because he did contribute to a lot of dances. A lot of things that he created were recognized. As a matter of fact, the first time I ever done the Joyce was with Alfred's company.
Wow.
You know,
so that was really in the heyday. I mean, we came to New York when my family moved from Maryland to New Jersey. We really were there in the heyday. I mean, Black dance was, you know, it was amazing. And you should also know that I've been engaging with Alfred over the last year to try to get him on here to be interviewed. So he said when he's able to get his hair cut. One time he told me, "Oh, I got to get my hair." Anyway, let me ask you this other thing. Before we started recording, I told you about this documentary, this Prince documentary. And I'm going to recommend it to anybody that can that's listening now to go out and find this documentary. It is a bootleg documentary of the story of Prince. It's a series. It's some random guy, because the people on YouTube, they do more research independently in their basements and do things and edit. They can edit better than professionals. They get paid in LA and New York. These kids in the basement are doing fantastic stuff. So there's the documentary, and it reminded me of your process, right? So when you hear about all of the people that were involved, and I think this is what people are missing. I think it really is a community of people that make something happen, right? So yeah, Prince was great, right? But because he was great and he had a gift, all of these people, he started pulling all of these people in his circle. And the numbers of people that he had, and the amount of effort, the amount of resources it took in order for him to break, it is incredible. So I recommend you take a listen to this. It talks about how he grew up. He got kicked out at 15 because he had some girl in his house, and his father said, all right, put your key on the table. That's how it went. That he said, no, put your key on the table. So he was living at his friend's friend's house. Mother was taking care of him. I mean, stuff like, if you think about it, the levels that he went just for the art. And the question to you is, when you think about all of the things that you've done, right, just to be in this space, can you reflect on moments like where you were like, I don't know if this is even going to work, or where you were like, because I mean, I was witness to it a lot during the 6 years or 7 years I was there. I witnessed a lot. I mean, I didn't say anything, I was watching, but there was always something going on, right, that was creating this pressure, right, that you had to move through in order to get to the next step.
I have to tell you, David, I think that during that time, I was evolving as a choreographer, and I always felt like I had something to prove. And I guess for me, proving it meant commission, like people hiring us to perform and so forth. And that I always said, if even if the critics don't like it and the audience likes it, I'm content with that. But at the same time, it was also trying to see if my mentors, say, hey, I never quite heard that, but I also knew that I was doing something unique at that time. I was mixing the Latin thing with the Black thing, and I knew that a lot of people compared my work to a lot of those same choreographers that I work with, but I made a mesh of things where I twisted some of their styles into, so I could see that it was me and not them. And little by little, I started finding who I am as a dance maker. Now, that being said, like anything, you never want a bad review, and like anything, you don't want what I always tell, that ongoing joke that Andy used to say back in the day. He used to say, oh, Rose is out there in the theater. And I said, who's Rose? He said, rows of empty seats. So I always remember that when people didn't show up for the concert.
Right.
But I wanted to prove that there is an audience out there for us, and that we are, Alpha Omega's been around since 1972. So they've been doing this, they've been going through the hardship, and I wanted to see if I could bring that to light, because if you look at it in historical content, Alpha Omega is one of the oldest organizations, along with Ailey and Ron K. Brown, and all these people have been Bushwoman and Abdel from Forces of Nature. We've been right along in that same pathway. I think we were always outside of the box.
Sure.
And I think I like it better to be outside of the box, you know? Like, for instance, Donna's saying, so what are we gonna do for our 50th anniversary? I say, I don't know.
When is it coming? When is it coming?
It's on 2/22.
2/22.
So what I asked, I said, should I go about the legacy thing? And she said, well, we did the legacy thing. We did legacy on the 35th anniversary, on the 45th anniversary. She goes, why don't we just be ourselves? You know, why don't we just be, you know, and hope that they'll come, and hope that that's enough to say, hey, you're doing something good. And so that's what I'm doing right now. This year, we have not rehearsed with a company at all. Everything was just producing for other people, you know, for other things. So I'm gonna try to get a chamber company to get the flow back in, and to let them know, look, we're gonna try to do something all next year into the following year, to 2/22. And if you hang with me, you'll see that there's gonna be a lot to do. Now, where and how we're gonna do this, because everything's all money, everything, how much theater cost, everything's all money.
It's always every day. It's always
never.
Everything is a business. You know, everything is. I keep trying to tell people everything's a business.
But check this out, David. Before Dee Dee was alive, and we never knew how things got paid, right? Because Dee Dee always paid for those things. Dee Dee was our founder. Just for your audience, her name is Dolores Vanison-Blakely, who was the founder of the organization, including Ron Pratt and Miriam Reeves. But now that everything is on us and me and Donna, we have the budget. We have to allocate how much of that budget goes to certain things. And so now I get to see the numbers, and I didn't realize how high those numbers were, but we're talking about average on a single concert could go, it's easy between $18,000 to $26,000.
Sure.
You know, but now, you know, we don't have a lot of those fears anymore. We're like, okay, we know how to prepare for these things now. And I think because of the new things that we're doing here, we are building a community that supports what we do. We have a lot of artists that want to be part of the program that we have ongoing for residency. And there's a beautiful thing about doing it, because we are able to create income for ourselves while still providing a space, while still getting grants for those programs. So it works out in various ways. And as you grow, all these technicality gets even worse, David.
Yeah, sure. Look,
if the budget goes higher, the responsibility gets even worse.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. You know, but I came from the opposite, so I knew it was a lot, and that was what I was pursuing. I was more going for the business side of the business creative, right? Creative side of the business, or the business side of the creative business, rather. But it's always a battle between those two areas, right? So I understood business and I understood creative, and I was able to translate between both worlds. But you know, sometimes I'd go for business jobs and they didn't get me. It's like being a mixed race kid, I guess, right? I was both business and creative, and the creative people didn't take me seriously, and then the business people didn't take me seriously. So I realized, like in this Prince documentary, what I related to was being by myself and doing everything on my own, right? Which is what he did in the beginning. I said, Dave, you just got to do it on your own, right? Like I always wanted to get everybody in first without necessarily having to show them what it is that I could do full out, right? So part of why I knew I had to do work with you guys was to really demonstrate to myself and to other people, you know, what I was capable of from the creative perspective, right? So, you know, I have accomplished that in some way. I still, as you say, it never ends. You know, I have the bug, so I will give myself, you know,
call it that fever. It's like, damn, I gotta really got to do this, you know.
So Enrique, would you perform again? Why don't you perform again for the 50s? You have like 2 years, right? February 22, was it 222?
I have not done a dance concert
It
since
doesn't have to be a long, drawn out thing, right? It could be
my late 30s. I'm like almost 30 years later since then, you know.
Now that would be something that people would, you know, turn up for. The seats would be full.
Nah, I'd rather stay where I am. But you know, it's funny. In one of the outdoor performance, the guitar guy, one of the singer-songwriter, because I knew him for years. A beautiful, his name is Jason, and I'm setting up, you know, the stage for him to have the mic, the keyboard, the guitar, and everything. So he starts talking to his audience, and he goes, "Oh, you know, I know most of y'all know Enrique, you know, like this fancy, you know, twinkle toe guy, you know, dancer and all that, you know, or you know him as a bouncer or something like that, you know." He said, "But a lot of people don't know that he actually could sing his butt off." Yeah. He starts playing "Knock Me Off My Feet" by Stevie Wonder. He said, but he never likes to get up in front of his audience. He said, and I will always tell him, I said, it's because that's my audience. My audience knows me as this. They don't know me as this other thing. He starts playing. He says, so he's talking to the audience. I'm in the side doing sound. He says, so are you gonna get up? And I'm looking at him, I go, this guy's, he's losing it. And so I turned down his mic. He go, oh, you're gonna turn down my mic now. And so I put his mic up. He goes, and he starts playing. He goes, come on, do a verse. And so he goes, you want me to bring the mic to you? I said, so I'm off to the side. So then he comes, he takes off his guitar. He comes, he goes, come on, get up and do something with me. So I started, we got up. The other guy gave me a mic and we started singing. Everybody's like, this is the guy that you don't know whether he's the artistic director, the maintenance man, or, you know, the troubleshooter, you know. And after the show, people were like, well, you know, your biography's not in the program. I said, well, it's about them, you know, but this is my home and this is what I do. He said, well, what's your background? I said, well, this is my background. This is what I do. I'm a choreographer, an actor, a singer, and when I'm doing one thing, that's what I am. When I'm not doing that, I'm doing it somewhere else, you know. But it's one of these things that I like to keep sort of private. So when even Alfred actually asked me to perform for one of his concerts not too long ago, and I have mails from Dwayne Cyrus and Dewan, I don't know if you know them. And they're like, oh, we're doing this concert in DC honoring Alfred and this, you know. And I was like, I'm 43 years old. I said, at that time. And I was like, I'm not, you know, because I have a specific aesthetic, you know. I have to get back to that weight and I have to get back in ballet class. And all that. Because I see my mentors do that. And I was like, I'm not going to be one of them. But never say never. Never say never. But now I think it's over my realm, you know.
Well, I only threw that out there because, I mean, as I'm going through it again, I mean, I'm picking an art form that, you know, people in their 60s do, right? So, you know, you'll see the old dude doing the flamenco on the street or this. In fact, the guy that I don't know if I told you this already, but I attended a course by one of the oldest flamenco dancers in the community. Like he's like the head, he's like the top guy, and he taught himself. He must be 80 years old. And I saw the program, or I saw the flyer in one of these studios, and I said, you know what, Dave, you need to go check him out. I said, because if you go check him out, it's similar to sort of when Ilio Palmieri showed up in Florida, right? And I was like, oh, what's going on here, right? I just knew there was a whole different energy, different vibe, and I was like, and I was just watching, right? So this guy, and I have his book here somewhere, one of the oldest ones. So I said, all right, I'm going to show up. And it was a Japanese woman who became a flamenco dancer, who has a studio in Switzerland, and somehow they got him, they were able to get him on. So I go into this class, I'm the only guy. There's always a guitarist. There are plenty of male guitarists, right? I mean, you can find a guitarist, no problem, right? Dancer's a whole nother thing. So we start warming up or something like that, and he does like sort of the beginning, and then as soon as I started, it's before the class started, and I was warming up, and he comes up to me, and he said, "You're gonna be fine." Right? Like he said something like, "You're gonna be fine." This is before the class even started, Enrique. So I had no idea the intricacies and all of the different things. It was sort of like the first time I auditioned with you. I was just throwing my whole body into it. And it was a two-day seminar, far away from where I live. So I took a hotel. I stayed overnight in this hotel. Next day I wake up and there he is. He and I are the only ones in this hotel eating breakfast. So I had to get up and say something to him. It was a very eerie. It was eerie, but you knew that there was something going on. I knew it, right? And Enrique, I even helped him to the studio the next day. So after breakfast, I actually helped the people who were organizing it to get him to the studio so we could take the class for the second day.
Wow. But
right. Yeah.
A lot of those folkloric dances which flamenco is a little more beyond folkloric because it requires a certain technique that you need to have. And you have some technique that you can lend itself to flamenco. But flamenco is one of those folkloric techniques that one is beautiful, two is storytelling.
It's storytelling.
And it's funny you mentioned about the guitars. Those guitars are very, very astute guitars. They're very classical too. So I'm not surprised that will intrigue you because that's one of the techniques that if I had to do something now with dance, that would be one.
Well, look, I'm going to link it to what you remember when you did tango, right? I didn't know that I knew. Like I knew how it was supposed to work. I knew how it was almost like an innate ability to know the way the movement's supposed to go. Now, sometimes I don't get it all, as authentically as they're doing it. I kind of a bit extra and I have to pull back. But this man came up at the end of that workshop. In Spanish, he said, I want to thank you for bringing me here. And, it was very important. And, I feel grateful. And then he said, I also want to thank you for the fact that there's a male dancer in class. And then went in to why it was important to have males. It was incredible. Now I didn't know everything that he said because it was Spanish and I know just enough. But it was clear. It was as if the universe brought us together, right? So to reflect back on the tango, I knew that the tango, when you started choreographing that, I knew that was a hit, like from the jump, from the gate. But at that time, I felt like I didn't have the authority to be able to say, hey, Enrique, you got a hit, right? Like I knew that piece could go from 0 to 100. Knew it.
You know what, David, that piece, I think those are two of my greatest pieces. One was Pegao, the other one is Tango. And I'm not a tango choreographer by no means. That was a collaboration with Angel Garcia. And when we were collaborating to choreograph that work, I said, I'm not trying to make the company a tango dance company, but I'm trying to keep it contemporized and showing little bits of the tango within this jazz sort of balletic structure. And I said, and I wanted the girls to portray men and girls. And I remember when we were creating it, the only thing I could go from is the way I move, or like he'll give me a phrase in the partnering and I'll do it, like I had to learn it myself when he was teaching it. So I learned it. And then I will partner the girl, and then I'll say, oh, I'm gonna do a suit tuning right here and come back to you. Or I would do this, or I'll do a barrel jump and get back to you, you know?
Right.
So all these things. And then eventually he said to me, he goes, you should learn the tango technique. I said, I know I should. It seems like another technique that would be one of those techniques that I would enjoy doing. And the curiosity of doing those things made me appreciate those footwear style or techniques that are so essence to even my background, you know. But it's like anything, I'm glad that tango Entertainment is, you know, I always say this is not a tango. This is just an,
yeah, you're defending it. No, but look, it's an important, this is what I now realize, right? Because I grew up in America, right? And I had a limited education with regard to dance, right? Even though I had it in high school, whatever, but in terms of it's important to indigenous people, and also in terms of musicality. So I think with regard to flamenco, what is great about it, and also tango and how you use the tango in the contemporary dance world, is literally, it was as if you were doing a fusion, or if this were a DJ mixing records, you would have been doing a remix of some sort. Exactly. And the way that you were, I didn't look at the movement necessarily. I was looking at the movement in combination with the beat, with how you were using the movement to literally create a different or another layer to the music that was already there. So just to give the audience an idea that basically the dance was a four or a quad, right? 4 girls or 4 guys, or however you envisioned it. And it was a combination of contemporary work, jazz, and tango. But the way that you would hit the marks, you know what I'm saying? You were hitting certain marks that were always surprise hits, or surprise, how do you call it, when you're literally ahead of the beat, like one step ahead of the beat, but it appears as if you're there, right? But you're ahead, but you're almost leading the record. Like it can be a point where you are dancing so well, you're out dancing the record. Like the record is some high level thing, but you've created a piece where it just flips the entire record and brings it elevates it, if that makes sense.
It's funny because it actually started with me, somebody letting me hear that particular composition. It's called the Gold Tank Project.
Right.
That's the name of the group.
Right.
And I said, wow, this fits within the contemporary thing, because they're not doing traditional tango. But the music is very complex because I like moving fast. Like this, the first section of tango, I told the dance, I said, be ahead of the music. I said, because now it's an observant, meaning you're being observed. So you look at the music as background music. Nothing's on beat. You're just playing as an actor. And that worked out with that section. Then what I said, that each section is a progression of the different rhythms of the song, of the different sections of songs that I chose. So by the end, there's a climate that goes up.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And that's how it worked out. I'm so happy that piece, even to this day, when I have the right 4 girls who could dance in heels, because you know that's hard to teach to a modern dancer or a contemporary dancer. And then it's also hard to teach sensuality for some reason.
Well, yeah.
or yes. Sensuality or knowing who you are as a woman or man, whatever that is. But I always tell dancers, I said, listen, we are just a vessel. We are non-sexual, we're not this. But when someone gives you a character, you have to arrive in that character.
Yes, sure.
Like Donna doing Narcissus. Right? It's originally choreographed on a man, but you see it so differently with Donna, right? And I go, and we always get into that topic about sexuality. I said, dance has nothing to do with sexuality. It's characters, and it's what the piece requires. So if you work with choreographers that are not choreographing in those tones, and then you go with an old school guy that we were taught to do characters, to do all these different things, then there's a technique that you're not learning.
Right.
You know, so these are things that I talk about with young people, and why the testament of time of certain works still work to this day. I say, you know, Revelation still works, you know.
Yeah. And also, Ricky, it also means that as soon as this COVID is over, people have to get back on the stage, because I do believe that you cannot arrive to the point in which you're asking a dancer to get to unless they've had experience. So I probably could do what you asked me to do, what was it, 20 years ago, 18 years ago, better now, just based on life experience, right? So, you know, and I think also going to different classes, which I wasn't doing, right? Going to different classes, taking it seriously, right? Going to classes, learning, being open, you know, knowing why you're there, all of this counts, right? You know, I was not committed, right? I was not committed.
You still gave what you had to give.
I gave what I had at that moment, right? Yeah. But I knew I had to give it more.
Listen, I'm gonna tell you something there. I gotta compliment you, because I remember when we did the Patiently Waiting with you and Shantae.
Yeah.
And you know, I was telling Don, I said, he looks really good, you know, because you had this, you didn't realize it, but you had this sort of Gene Kelly sort of type of thing. And I said, and it works. And then at the same time, you didn't even realize the type of technique that you could kept on evolving, because your body, you kept on, at that time, you know, you complained, oh, that hurts, this hurt. I said, yeah, it has to hurt. Nothing feels good in dance, you know, when you have many rehearsals. But you had a natural ability of understanding a lot of things, and things that you weren't aware that you could do.
Sure.
And I remember a jump that I taught you, and I said, I don't know if he's gonna get this, but I'm gonna throw it at him. And you did get it. So we always laugh about that. I said, David just got a great review on the New York Times, you know, with Shantae, you know. So I look at it that way.
It was a different way. Look, I told you, and I looked at the third interview I did. I was in a different world. I was like, all right, I'm here for the ride, right? That's how I'm here for the ride. I'm here for the ride. Now, in that, I knew that I had to do some other stuff, right? I knew that there was something that I had a calling, right? I was clearly being called, but at that moment, I wasn't really listening to the call. So I just say, okay, I'm moving the direction of the call, and then I'll work it out later, right? Like I'll work it out as we, you know, move along. And I would say, even now, Enrique, I'm in Switzerland and I'm talking to you in New York, right? I mean, so what does that mean, right? That means I'm still on the, you know, I'm still on the path. I'm still on the path. Now, how it all plays out.
One, you're using your knowledge of dance and putting in this media thing, but I'm sure that I'll get to see you dance in one of those flamenco things.
Yeah, look, I'm committed to it. I'm a commit to it. So look, is there anything else that we want to cover? We want to make sure that people know where you are and what you're up to, different projects that you have.
I'm gonna start this project, which I'm gonna try to get the company back together, but it's also residency with other artists called Storylines. And Storylines is pairing choreographers or dance makers with different singer-songwriters, and you create a storyline behind their composition while they're performing. You know, not while they're performing, but while their composition is about for presentation. And we are going to try, hoping that the climate of COVID change, because we're going to do it indoors for live streaming. So I'm gonna see if one or two of those presentations work, and if they work out fine, then I'll do it all the way into the Woman Month starts, and then I'm gonna go back to the solo suite, or duet or trios. I don't know, you know, whatever the climate allows me to do, because I made a few investments. Like I bought my own floor for the outdoor. I said, you know what, I rented this floor, I'm gonna buy my own floor. And we bought the floor. We bought a new sound system strictly for the outdoors. Now, everybody said, what's the sound system? It's not a boom box. You know, back in the days, used to bring the boom box,
Right.
put the tape. No, it's a full-on mixer with the capacity to do a show in a big theater. And the reason for all these things, David, the reason that I put a lot of investment back in production is because what I realized when we were doing it, we never had time. We never had enough time for tech. We never had time for costume. We never had time to rehearse thorough, you know. So I just want to make sure that anything that comes out of this house, any residency, any artist that I'm supporting for their project, that they have everything that they need. You know, one day I got as a matter of fact, I'm gonna send you the year's final thing, you know, what organizations. I have a whole bunch of video links that you can press on. I'm gonna send it to you. So you can see what we were able to achieve during COVID. And I guess next year we are gonna try to repeat the same thing with different other artists and different things. And then see what, you know, the vaccine actually works, and, you know, we get this under control. I don't know, you know, everybody's saying, well, what are you going to do? You're going to take the vaccine? I said, listen, either I take the vaccine or, you know, I'd wait to, you know, see if some of y'all, you know, are still around before I take it. But look, like anything, man, I'm going with the flow. I'm not listening to conspiracy theory. I'm not going to go there because you know. You
don't need to be in that space. You don't want to.
Listen, I can't get nothing done.
Right.
If you're caught up in that, not going to get nothing done.
Right, I understand.
You know, but I live in the present, and I love that part of me. I love, you know, coming in, even when there's nobody around, I'll go in the studio, start playing around. Or I write down things that I need to complete. And Donna's always the one that I share it with, and she goes, you always never take a break. I say, yeah, I don't want to take a break.
Right.
I need to take a break. But what I'm saying is, I am a producer / choreographer. That's who I am. That's what I do, just like you are a producer in media and still doing dance.
Yeah.
You got to stay focused. I'm telling you, a lot of your stuff is good. And I must say, you need to lighten up and laugh a little bit. And
look,
I think you're onto something good, man.
I already know. Somebody said, David, if you weren't doing this, what, you know, if you had, what was the question? If you had all the money in the world, no, what would you be doing? And I said, I'd be doing what I'm doing right now.
You know what you should do, David? One day, if you find yourself in New York, do it during it in a studio with just the actual thing, talking about it, demonstrating, and like.
What do you mean, like
an outdoor situation? You know, like when you go interview a choreographer in a studio.
Oh, like going to like on site or
on site.
Yeah. Look, I mean, Enrique, that was sort of what I was doing in New York before I even, you know, started working with you. Like I was working at these, you know, MSNBC, Charlie Rose. So I witnessed a little bit of the sexual harassment of, you know, which actually got a lot of people thrown out, right? So that whole wave, I was there, but I was even, I'll tell you a short story. There was stuff going down at the Charlie Rose show. And apparently, I guess he was sexually harassing the women. All I cared about was just being there, right? I didn't care about any of that. And stuff went down where he asked me to write a memo telling him who I would have on the show, ways to make the show better, etc. Gave him a memo. Enrique, the next day, all my ideas are on the whiteboard, right? Wow. Like, all my ideas on the whiteboard. So I'm like, what is going on? He never said or never acknowledged where it came from. And then I was like, well, maybe I should do another one, right? Like I wrote him a second memo. And the whole idea is that you had to go across the street. This is on Park Avenue in Bloomberg. So you had to go across the street to his penthouse, put the documents, whatever he needed to read, outside the door on some table. So I put my memo in the bunch of documents so that he could read it. And all my ideas started getting, seen. It started to leak out. Either he told someone that this guy's an intern. This is one in my mind, what happened. This guy's an intern, and he's he's doing better than you guys are. Like he tried to use me as a way to motivate them because they were sort of acting as if they were on strike. Like, because they were so angry at him, probably for being an asshole, that they sort of pulled back in terms of their work. So he had a meeting with them. I think this is before they came for me, he had a meeting with them, and somehow I stayed behind, and that's how I got connected with him on the elevator, and he asked me to do all of that. Long story short, they came for me, and Enrique, I found the inner strength. I was like going toe to toe with them, and I was like, hey, I can't even believe that you're going toe to toe with these people. Like I was like, say something. I mean, I got a little ghetto, a little street, the little ghetto that I have in my body. I was like, no, you guys aren't taking advantage of me. And at the end, I literally tracked Charlie down. Here's this guy 6'2". Here I am like 5'7", running around trying to get somebody. And I managed to corner him and say, look, I just need to talk to you. So we talked. I said, all I wanted to know was whether my stuff was good, right? I mean, I wanted to know, I just needed confirmation. I don't care about any of this other stuff. I'm not trying to get a job here. Like what's up? Even one of the last thing I want to tell you, that he had hired this old school guy from 60 Minutes or something. Old guy. He was like from Queens or Brooklyn or something. And they sent this guy when all of this controversy started happening, they came for me. They sent this guy and the guy comes up to me and said, let's take a walk around the block. I said, walk around the block? I'm in my mind thinking, why am I going to walk around the block with you? Well, essentially, they had crossed a line that was really into discrimination and really, it was illegal what was going on. And I was like, I don't care about that. I just want to know, Charlie, was my stuff good? That's all I wanted. If you had just said, Dave, stuff is great.
Wow. It
would have been cool, right? And it's not like I was trying to angle for a gig. So I'm already trying to figure out where I'm going to go next. Y'all are taking this way out of proportion. So I said, he goes, and when the guy took me around the block, he goes, what do you want? I'm like, what do I want? So he was trying to, I guess, elicit a bribe or so, like for me to bribe them or something like that. I'm like, no, it ain't gonna go down like that. So even though, Enrique, I had fear, there have been times like this where something jumps out of my body and I go toe to toe with some of the most powerful people. I mean, that's not the only story that I have where I've said, oh, no, you don't. Oh, no, it's not going down like this. And at the end, Enrique, I went up, they gave my end date and I said, cool. And then I walked up to Charlie. I said, Charlie, you mind if you take a picture with me? And he made the executive producer, the one that pretty much like dogged me out, take the picture of me and him at the table, right? He was like, yeah, come on, Dave, come on. Like, I'm not trying to tell on you. I'm just trying to get a gig. I'm using this to get to the next level. Y'all got it all wrong. You got it all wrong, right? So I've cherished my New York moments. That's another, thing that happened to me. When you're in New York, as you know, lots of stuff happens to you. So what are you gonna do?
That's the journey, man.
It's the journey. So you gotta somehow just say, all right, I take it. I gotta take that lump. I gotta take that L.
And you gotta run with it, man. You gotta run with everything, man. Because right now, look, we're in that age now, right? Yes. We're in that age that it doesn't matter what you do anymore.
No.
As long as you are committed to know where you want to get to with that.
Yes.
And that's what I think I am too. It's
yeah, I can feel it.
you know, I'm not looking for things that that before it was important to me, you know. Now it's like, no, you know, I know that I have to create projects that create work for people to be on stage. I know that I have a home that have a supported community to come and see these things. And so I'm just gonna go with the flow, man. I'm gonna prepare between this coming year and the following year for our 50th. And I wanna make sure that I have it right, you know.
You're fine. You're fine. And look, you were much more at ease than you were when you and I were working together.
Okay,
You were much more at ease. That's why I'm like, all right, you know, you got the building, you've accomplished a lot, right? And I, you know, again, thank you for making yourself available for the interview. And send me information. I think the links that you're talking about, and I'll figure out how to piece it together so that we can upload it and share it with as many people as possible.
Yeah, just so you know, the links that you're gonna see is variations of things that we did during this year. And there's one segment that is about the indoor shooting that we did with 3 cameras, and we edited, we made it look like this, you know, these really fancy shoot. That was one. The other one are the 3 or 4 series of the outdoor presentations of different artists, different things. And so they're short clips, so they're not like really long clips. But because you know that's copyright too, you know. But it's just, you know, what I could tell your audience is during COVID is when the arts really come out.
I think so too.
People start becoming a little more creative, and you know, thank the universe that I was taught those skills of saying, let's try. If you don't try, nothing will get done. If you don't try it, if you don't build it, you won't know if you could sit on it. You don't know if you could dance on it. And what I learned is that it's rewarding because everybody's gonna start telling you, even, you know, a lot of these choreographers that were in the program, they were saying, man, thank you. I haven't been in a studio now for the longest time. And I, you know, some of them felt like a fish out of water, you know, but I was like, hey, you know, this is what we do. This is what we got to do now. And listen, it didn't bring exuberant of money like that. It never does. But it kept you in the practice of doing things.
Yeah, it's important.
And it kept you supporting the things that people, or that these dance makers also want, which was space, lighting, sound, and a place to correct their creation.
Well,
so, you know, that's what I'm doing right now. And, you know.
Well, my prediction is that it's going to be a renaissance after COVID, but you know, how it takes shape. I know that I'm doing my part, right? So I've been wanting to do this sort of thing for a long time. I was like, oh, this is my opportunity now because everybody's at home. So at least they're going to take a look at the video, right? They're at least going to know who I am even more so by taking a look at the video, right? Wow. Whereas before I didn't have that, right? You know, you're competing with everybody's time. Right, to get out who you know, and also let's say, you know, dance, there was a reason why dance happened in the 70s, 80s. There was a reason. It was a fantastic thing. And I think maybe it was the fact that there was in New York City, there was a financial decline, recession in the 70s, right?
Same shit was now.
Similar to now, right? So afterwards, what'll happen, maybe people will start moving to New York again instead of moving out. Maybe. We'll see what happens.
I think for 4 years we've been under this sort of choke. And I think that with COVID, we had to learn how to breathe. We had to learn how to talk and communicate with people and say, hey, I'll take a chance or whatever, you know. And a lot of those things actually manifest themselves. And I encourage, if anybody could, from your series could hear me, do it. Don't put it in your thought, put it in action. That's all right.
Yeah. I'll let that be the last word. Enrique, thank you so much. And
Thank
look,
you, brother.
I look forward to seeing you in person. You
Mhm.
know, that's what hopefully 2021, God willing.
Let's see, man. Yeah, let's
All
see.
right. All right. Let's see what happens and take care of yourself. Tell Donna I said what's up, and have a great upcoming new year in 2021.
A few days from now.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so
Later,
much.
brother.
All right. Take care of yourself. Ciao.